Welcome back, Mando.
Ho! 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 Ho. Greetings, Bucketheads. Mevar Tagar. Welcome to our 303rd Best Buddies Bounty Hunting episode of Mando Vision. I'm your host, Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small, independent Star Wars podcast. Reach out to us on the socials of Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram, Mandovision at Blue Sky. Follow us, email us, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. All right, Bucketheads, welcome back. We're here for another Star Wars Rebels rewatch series. We're getting deep into season 2. We're getting some more character-based episodes, and it's a good time to a good time to be revisiting Rebels. This week, like last week, very Hera-centric. This week, very Sabine-centric. And Sabine has sort of been the mystery character up to this point. And we get a little bit of background on her in this episode. It's very, very exciting, but not a lot. It's just sort of teased out a little bit. You know, the little snippets we've gotten over the years, we just kind of pull on that a little bit more. You know, we're still not going to learn about her time at the Imperial Academy. We're actually going to cover a little bit of her life after getting out of the Imperial Academy, and as we hear in this episode, breaking out of the Imperial Academy with a friend of hers named Ketsu Onyo, and and how they become bounty hunters after they get out of the Empire, and they have these big glorious dreams of joining Black Sun, and that seems weird to me, but what do I know about bounty hunting and joining criminal organizations? Not a whole lot, my friends, not a whole lot. So we're going to talk about that in the episode. We're going to get into it and spend some time kind of looking into Sabine, the lone wolf, if you will, of these characters, and sort of in the let's see, if we go with our family dynamic, right? We want to talk about Rebels as a family, right? Hera and Kanan as the dads, and the rest of the Spectres as sort of like the children, right? Obviously, Ezra's the youngest one. Zeb's like the oldest, like the oldest brother, you know, and Sabine to her is sort of the angsty lone wolf teenager of the group, right? Very private, keeps to herself, stays in a room and listens to her music way too loud. But that's okay, we all understand. Probably wears but unlike a lot of angsty teens, not wearing all black. No. Sabine's still very colorful, a very vibrant personality. But yeah, definitely like the one with secrets, the one who keeps to herself, as Ezra points out in the episode. Eats by herself, trains by herself, goes off by herself. You know, she is probably the most isolated of the characters in this family dynamic. And it's not that she doesn't act as part of a team. It's not that she is uncomfortable when she's around everybody in the action when they're doing things. It's just that I think, as we will learn over time with Sabine, she has a lot of baggage, a lot of baggage as a Mandalorian, and we will get to unpack that as they present it to us. In the meantime, though, right before we get into the episode, there is a little bit of Star Wars-y stuff I wanted to mention. Maybe you're already out there listening to Katie Sackhoff's podcast. On the latest episode, she has Ron Moore, the great writer of many, many science fiction things. I first got to be familiar with Ron Moore's work back on Star Trek, Next Generation, and Deep Space Nine. And then he would go on to reinvent Battlestar Galactica on the Sci-Fi Network with Katie Sackhoff. In this interview, in this podcast, the reason why we're mentioning it is because there's a snippet in there, about a 5-minute snippet or so, where Ron talks about George Lucas bringing him on to help write and develop the live-action series that George Lucas wanted to do for Star Wars. And he talks about how there was somewhere between 40 and 50 scripts completed, ready to go, locked up, and you know, how those scripts will probably never see the light of day, because as Ron Moore and the other writing members, once their part of the task was completed, they moved on to their other things, and George was going to start doing the Star Wars, right? And as we would find out later, it was he didn't quite have the technology where he wanted it, as is often the case for George, who's always trying to push those boundaries of the technology. And then he would just eventually end up selling to Disney, and so I would imagine these scripts are in a vault somewhere at Skywalker Ranch, and it's a shame that they will probably never see the light of day, or will probably remain unproduced forever and ever and ever. But he gets into a lot more of the specifics with it, and I think it's really neat to kind of hear what George had in mind. They don't go into specifics of the show itself, but more of the kind of idea of the way that George was going to present the series, of him going off, filming it, producing it all on his own, and then taking to a network and saying, here's the show. We're not taking notes. We're not taking feedback from you. This is it. Take it or leave it. It's some really neat stuff. I really enjoyed it. Ron Moore has a ton of great stories. If you're not watching For All Mankind, another excellent alternate timeline television series on Apple, highly recommended. Get the chance to check it out. But go listen to the interview. Katie Sackhoff's podcast is quite fun, and she often has amazing guests like Ron Moore on it. So I don't often advocate for other podcasts on the show, but Katie Sackhoff's part of the Star Wars family. So yeah, go out and check that out, all right? Good interview with Ron Moore, talking about his time writing scripts for George Lucas. And I'll save one of my favorite bits is Ron and getting sort of describing arguments with George Lucas about Star Wars. It's quite amusing. Check it out. I know a bunch of websites have probably picked it up, and you can probably find it on the YouTubes too. So check it out. Good times. All right, let's go ahead, start getting into our episode of the podcast, which means we're going to give you all those episode particulars right now. And let's go ahead. This is Star Wars Rebels Season 2, Episode 8, Blood Sisters. Original air date November 18th, 2015. Written by Kevin Hobbs, directed by Bosco and G. Primary cast for this week's episode: Taylor Gray as Ezra Bridger, Vanessa Marshall as Harrison Dula, Tia Sakar as Sabine Wren, Dave Filoni's Chopper, Steve Bloom is EG86. He's usually Zeb, but I don't think Zeb's in this episode very much, so no Zebin tonight. We got Stephen Stanton as our group of Imperials, and of the great Gina Torres joins the show as Ketsu Onyo, the bounty hunting buddy, former colleague of Sabine Wren. Our plot for this week: on a mission to escort a courier with secret information vital to the rebel cause to her rendezvous point, Sabine must face off against her old friend and partner. Well, there you have it, friends. All right, so let's go ahead, get into the episode. You know what that means. It's time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
Get out of here. We'll hold them off.
You're going to have to relocate the covert.
This is the way.
This is the way.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about our new friend, Ketsu Onyo, and her ship, the Shadowcaster, a ship with a unique background, because originally it was designed as a Asajj Ventress's ship, but it was never used in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, so it was kind of repurposed for this episode. It's a neat ship. I like the visuals on it very, very much. The name Shadowcaster comes from Pablo Hidalgo of Lucasfilms, who I guess back in his day, as a teen, that was the name of his ship in the Star Wars role-playing game, so he suggested it, and they went with it. So that's why you get a fun name like Shadowcaster for Ketsu's ship. All right, like we said, this is a Sabine-centered episode, and we very, very quickly get away from the crew of the rest of the Spectres, I should say, right? So Hera gives this assignment to Sabine, but Ezra's going to be back up, Chopper's going to be back up, and it's to go get a courier and get him safely to the rendezvous point to deliver vital information for the rebel cause. All right, so basically we split right there. That's the last we see of Hera. Kanan's not in this episode. Zeb's not in this episode. And very quickly, Sabine's not even going to have Ezra with her. But she does at the start. So they head off, the lone wolf on a mission with Ezra and Chopper. And I did enjoy it. Thought it was amusing because obviously we know Ezra has like a crush on Sabine. So seeing them kind of together and the way she sort of deals with him, the way she sort of ignores him is amusing to me. I find it very, very funny. Something I found a little peculiar. As they're making their way to the spaceport to find this courier, there's a piece of graffiti that Sabine recognizes. The sort of tag that we find out later signifies that Ketsu Onyo's there. It seems like a strange thing to do as a bounty hunter, because I mean, I feel like if people start to recognize that tagging, it would be bad for your business. That's just me, but I think it maybe also shows a little bit of the similarities that Ketsu and Sabine have, and why they probably became friends at the Imperial Academy on Mandalore, because they have probably a shared interest in art and painting things and tagging things. So maybe it exists just for that purpose, but it seemed like a strange kind of calling card for a bounty hunter to sort of mark something and alert somebody that they're there. It is an interesting choice. So nothing happens with it immediately. Ezra, Sabine, Chopper, they make their way to the spaceport, to Shuttle Bay 22, I believe it was. And they're looking for this courier. No one knows what the courier looks like, but they do know that the courier got on the ship, and there's a password to say to get that person to acknowledge them and realize who it is. And they say it to everybody all the time. It's a long way to Alderaan. It's a long way to Alderaan. Blah, blah. Nothing happens. They go by. Every person they say this to just ignores them and walks away. It's at the very, very end when the spaceport is closing down that Ezra is sitting on a what appears to be a power drowned gonk droid. It decides to say it, and then it activates the GNK power droid, and we learned that is EG-86, and he is in fact the courier. This is also when Ketsu makes her debut, her first appearance, springs into action. They have a back and forth because this is when we establish that Ren and Ketsu know each other. We find out that Ketsu is a bounty hunter for Black Sun, and there's a bounty. The Empire's put out a bounty on the rebels, so Ketsu here to collect on her old friend, and so we get a lot of verbal sparring, a lot of back and forth between the two characters. And it's when the Empire shows up, when some stormtroopers come to clear them out because that port is closed, that the action begins. And we see the Ketsu is quite good at the combat, the fisticuffs, the slobber knockerine, if you will, and puts down a couple stormtroopers pretty quick, lickety-split, a couple nice moves, uses one as a meat shield. It's a good time. Meanwhile, as this is going on, Ezra, Sabine, and Chopper are able to get the power droid onto a space bus, and they're going to get away, right? That's the plan. We got to get the courier out of here. Let's just get on the shuttle and get out of here. So they do. They steal the space bus, driven by one of our old friends from Star Tours, and they take off. Ketsu, in hot pursuit, right? Ditches the Imperials, makes her way out of the bay. Ezra falls off the ship. He gets left behind. So we get Sabine and Chopper with EG-86. Ketsu in hot pursuit. They think they're safe. No. That's when we see the Shadowcaster take off right behind them. And then we get into this little space combat. And Sabine, knowing what Ketsu's going to do, they exchange. Well, again, the bus has no combat capabilities, so it gets disabled pretty quickly, including, I guess, what's Ketsu's signature move is blasting the hatch doors. Hatch doors? I feel like it's the same thing. Blasts the hatch off the side of the bus, exposing it to the vacuum of space. Things are getting blown out, including Chopper. But we know Chopper's capable. He's not gone. But Sabine and EG are fighting against the getting blown out into space themselves. eventually they are able to activate the force field to re-pressurize the cabin. And Chopper is going to do Chopper things in a minute, because Ketsu's going to call, hey, you're disabled. I want the bounty. Let's go. This is over. And it's not, because Chopper disables Ketsu's weapon system and then taunts her about it. And it's pretty darn amusing. So Sabine will try to leave. They're trying to get Chopper. Doesn't work out. Ketsu gets Chopper in a tractor beam. And now she thinks she has some leverage here. So Ketsu sort of is all over the place in this episode, I think, because she starts off, says she wants the bounty on Sabine, but now she's clearly trying to get the power droid and do a swap, Chopper for the power droid. So her priorities seem to have shifted, and that's okay. That's okay. Again, this is all sort of secondary to exploring this history, this relationship that Sabine and Ketsu have with one another. And again, at the beginning of the episode, as Ezra points out, Sabine is alone a lot, isolated, intentionally so. But we see that at one point she had a partner, a friend, a confidant, a bestie, and it went south. And these might be the reasons, some of the reasons why Sabine is the way Sabine is. So we're getting there, but we're also exploring this relationship, this friendship, and sort of how Sabine feels that she's evolved compared to Ketsu, and trying to make Ketsu realize that they were selfish, that they were just in it for themselves, that they were doing things from a bad place. And now that Sabine's part of something, it's helped reinvigorate who she is and her purpose. And she thinks that Ketsu could do the same thing. If only she would stop looking at inward, right, at herself and her priorities and what's important to her alone, as opposed to the greater good of the galaxy. And that's, again, so Ketsu starts off at one place in this episode, and by the end she will be in another place, more towards Sabine's side of the street. So we get the two ships to dock together, which you don't see often in Star Wars, but it's kind of fun when it does happen. And then the Empire shows up, right? Again, they think, Ketsu thinks she's going to make a trade with Sabine, but not so much. And that's when Sabine does a lot of that reflecting on her past and her selfishness and her past. And then the Empire shows up and like, hey, one of those ships is stolen. What's going on here? Well, Sabine stalls, because now Ketsu and Sabine are clearly on the same side, because none of them want to deal with the Empire. Because obviously they escaped from an Imperial Academy, so they must not be fans. So Sabine stalls and gets them 2 minutes of time. They plant explosives on the shuttle, and yeah, I mean, again, Sabine has a plan, because Ketsu has all these explosives. They're gonna do it. They got an idea. Well, the Empire locks in on the tractor beam. On the plan is to blow up the shuttle and get away in the Shadowcaster. The Empire tractor beams both ships, and then it becomes like, oh no, now we have to do this and this to make sure this happens. And eventually, listen, spoilers. They figure it out. Now, Sabine does get knocked out at one point, and that's when Ketsu, thinking selfishly, is preparing to leave her behind and get away from the Empire. Chopper sort of makes her go back and get Sabine. And it's sort of like doing that good deed makes her realize that she has been selfish. And maybe she's not going to change completely, but maybe she's going to start to change a little bit. I guess we have to wait and see how that all plays out, right? So the shuttle explodes. They turn back on. By the way, they turn back on the, our Star Tours pilot, and it's amusing to see him sort of. I don't know. It's comedic, and it's the way that the Star Tours bus driver wants to disengage, and then the realization that there's explosives all around him, and then he blows up. And blowing up just makes sure that the Empire loses the tractor lock on the Shadowcaster. Shadowcaster splits, and they get out of there. But they drop off EG-86 at the rendezvous point, where we see R2-D2, and R2-D2 and Chopper have a little exchange. And then it's back to Gorel, where Sabine and Ketsu part on good terms. Hera makes an offer. Hey, anytime you want to help out the cause, we could use a good person like you. But Ketsu's not ready for that kind of commitment just yet, to walk that sort of path. I imagine there's probably like some repercussions if you just walk away from Black Sun. Not entirely sure of that. Again, my time working for criminal organizations is limited, so I couldn't say for certain. But yeah, we end up on good terms. They're buds again. And again, we get that glimpse into who Sabine used to be before she was with the Rebels. And it's a solid episode as far as like the character-centric episodes go. I don't think it's as good as the Hera episode from last week, because and I think it's partially because they're still playing kind of fast. They're still playing it close to the vest with Sabine's background and a lot of the secrets that will come out down the road as we kind of get into things, as the mythology sort of builds around the show further into this season and then definitely into the next two. So they play kind of close to the vest, and I think that prevents them from really getting the same sort of emotional connection that we get with Hera in last week's. But I still think it's a really solid episode. I give it, it's like $7, 7.5. 7.5, I'm feeling generous. 7.5 on it. It's fun. It's enough fun, lighthearted action entertainment. Chopper's bit where he disables Ketsu's ship and takes her weapons array. Very, very amusing stuff. I had a good time with that. I think Chopper's sort of the unsung hero of this episode. And very, very amusing. So yeah, 7.5, and that is the episode known as Blood Sisters. All right, my friends, that does it for our podcast. We'll be back as soon as we can with more Star Wars Rebels Rewatch. Always stay tuned to the feed for any Star Wars news that breaks. The countdown to Andor continues, and we're so excited for that. On that note, we will be able to do podcasts. Probably not the night after Andor comes out. We'll have to see how it goes, because those are gonna be long. But the next day, the Wednesdays, we should be able to get a podcast going and get it out to you guys later that day to talk about Andor, with 4 episodes dropping or 3 episodes dropping every Tuesday night. I feel like that's gonna be a challenge to watch and sort of do a podcast. But we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll be so fired up by each weekly installment of Andor that I just can't contain myself, and we have to have a chat about it. We will see. But yeah, at the very least, we're going to do those episodes Wednesday morning and get them out to you as quick as we can. All right, my friends, Buckethead Nation, you continue to be the best. You are the best podcast supporters out there. I truly, truly thank you guys for all the support over the years. It's meant the world to me. Reach out to me on the socials, Mando_Vision, Twitter/X and Insta. You can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Don't forget about Mandovision on Blue Sky. If you're over there, check it out. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. If possible or so inclined, give us those sweet 5-star reviews. Truly, truly appreciate it, guys. It really helps these days with all those Katie Sackhoff shows out there that are crushing us as far as numbers go. But that is what it is. All right, my friends. Go out there, be great Star Wars fans. We'll be back next week. Well, next time. Maybe we'll get 2 out this week. Let's see what happens. All right, Bucketheads. Remember, this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way. This is the way.
Just did the castle run in 12 parsecs. Not if you round down, buddy. Yeah.